A petition demanding refunds for Battlefield 2042 hit a staggering milestone. Valve's Steam Deck seems to be stacking up to their bold claims. Nvidia dropped a $40 billion deal, and much more on Today in Gaming. Hey guys, LevelCap here, and a petition to provide automatic refunds for Battlefield 2042 has reached 25,000 signatures. The petition calls on EA and DICE to offer no questions asked refunds to anyone that wants one. Many platforms like Steam, console storefronts, and others provide a refund system that guarantees approval based on specific criteria. In Steam's case, you can get an automatic refund for any game if you've played it for less than 2 hours. They generally approve any refund request with a valid technical issue as well, but EA's Origin platform is a bit of a different beast. Their Great Game Guarantee provides no question asked refunds for 24 hours from the time that you first played a game, or within 7 days of purchasing a game, or within 7 days of the launch for a pre-order game. The policy does have some flexibility for games with technical issues, but again, this comes down to a case-by-case basis. Worse than that, the Great Game Guarantee doesn't cover additions of games that reward players with in-game currency. It sounds like getting a refund approved today for 2042 if you bought it on launch is going to be pretty tough. The petition threatens EA with legal action, saying if it reaches 50,000 signatures, a lawyer is willing to file a lawsuit against the publisher. Game refunds on digital storefronts have been a highly debatable topic for basically as long as these platforms have existed. Things have gotten a lot better in recent years as many countries have started demanding platforms like Steam, the iOS App Store, and other storefronts to adhere to their consumer protection laws. Depending on where you live, you might have easier access to refunds on these platforms. Ultimately, this whole situation is a pretty tough call, and blanket no questions asked refund policy effectively turned platforms into rental services where smaller developers get pinched the hardest. Steam's solution does seem to be pretty reasonable, and it'll be interesting to see if EA adopts a similar refund policy. Initial hardware reviews of Valve's upcoming portable PC console, the Steam Deck, paint a very favorable picture for the piece of hardware. Most reviews highlight the impressive performance that meets or beats competing products at half the cost while providing a superior software experience. Valve essentially rebuilt their SteamOS Linux distribution from the ground up for the Steam Deck, so all of its inputs and features work natively with basically every game on the platform. Reviewers also noted that the Steam Deck's micro SD slot provided nearly identical load time performance to its internal storage. In theory, you could kit out a Steam Deck with a terabyte of storage without making any significant compromises to the experience. And this is a pretty big deal because historically Valve have struggled with their hardware products, but they've also hit some home runs over the years too. Their VR hardware is the gold standard for quality headset design. The Steam Deck will probably be a revolutionary device for PC gamers, and not just because it runs games well, but because Valve has done the hard work to ensure that the software and hardware work well together. Their Proton translation tool that gets Windows-only games running on Linux without user intervention was a massive leap for Linux gaming. Without it, the Steam Deck would have suffered the same fate as the Steam machines. But with it, you can take your entire Steam library on the go while not being forced to make any major sacrifices for the luxury of a portable hardware experience. The one slight caveat to all of this good news is, well, the anti-cheat support. Valve promises to make supporting anti-cheat on SteamOS easy for developers. They recently published updates to their documentation that shows how easy it is, but some developers aren't quite buying it. The most notable example is Epic CEO Tim Sweeney. He responded on Twitter to a user asking if Fortnite would be available on the Steam Deck. Sweeney says the answer is no, because the open nature of Linux and massive popularity of Fortnite would make it basically impossible to stop cheaters from ruining the game. Naturally, there is a little bit of a wrinkle to this story though. Epic does own Easy Anti-Cheat, the company that makes the anti-cheat software Fortnite and hundreds of other games use, and the list of games using it includes some heavy hitters like Apex Legends, Rainbow Six Siege, and more, aka massively popular games that are an attractive target for hackers. Epic themselves made a big deal of Easy Anti-Cheat support on Linux in a blog post last year, with Sweeney implying that Easy Anti-Cheat isn't up to the task for Fortnite, while the company itself is advertising how easy it is to support Linux for other massive titles, stirred some controversy on social media. Many responses have pointed out that Sweeney's real motive could easily just be to avoid Steam's revenue split by downplaying the effectiveness of Fortnite on the platform, and that's really a no-brainer. Why sacrifice a significant portion of your game's income to support Steam, a competing game distribution platform. What's more concerning is that Sweeney believes Fortnite is too valuable to support on Linux while licensing the same anti-cheat solution to titles that need equal protection. The Grand Theft Auto Remaster trilogy has sold 10 million copies. That exceeds Rockstar's own expectations for the collection. Leading up to the Remasters launch, fans of the franchise were concerned that it was straying too far from the original vision of the classic title. On launch, a litany of technical issues and bizarre changes to the look of the original game marred reviews from both players and critics. There was widespread outrage at the state of the remasters, leading to an apology from the developers. They promised to fix everything and since then have launched at least one massive update. And while the negative buzz probably impacted sales somewhat, it clearly didn't slow them down from raking in 10 million sales. Nvidia have dropped their bid to buy CPU company Arm. The $40 billion deal would have given Nvidia control over the world's largest CPU platform. Arm is notable because their licensing is exceptionally generous and their CPU architecture is incredibly stable. That means that everyone from small indie hardware companies to literally the world's largest tech companies like Apple and Google can leverage Arm without taking a massive hit to their bottom line. Regulators worried Nvidia would clamp down on licensing to stifle competition or use Arm's position to create a monopoly. The FTC sued to prevent the deal from happening, and multiple countries were investigating it as well. Nvidia says Arm is the most important CPU architecture in the world, but that they're stepping away from their bid to buy the company. In other Nvidia news, their latest GPU driver update might have fixed major technical issues with Final Fantasy VII's Remaster. The game launched to wildly negative reviews on PC because of performance problems that caused massive stutters and low FPS. Modders released their own fixes, and many players forced the game to run in an older API to partially alleviate the issues. Nvidia claims their new driver resolves the stuttering issue, but it sounds like your mileage may vary. The Batman Arkham collection is allegedly coming to the Nintendo Switch in August. A French retailer's website briefly listed the collection for $60. The listing mainly had placeholder info and didn't say which Arkham games are included in the bundle. It's safe to assume that Asylum, City, and Night are all included. The bundle may also include Batman Arkham Origins, but that game is more of a spin-off than a mainline entry in the series, so it's tough to say. As for why anyone is taking this accidental listing seriously, the same retailer previously leaked The Witcher 3 Switch port before it was officially announced. Shadow Warrior 3's system requirements are a sight for sore gamer eyes. The upcoming FPS melee action brawler launches on March 1st, and thankfully you won't need a NASA PC to run it. Their recommended specs for a 1080p 60fps experience on high settings are a mid-tier Ryzen 2700 CPU and a GTX 1080. It'll only take up 31GB of storage as well, so it should be a smaller download than most big game launches. Shadow Warrior's developers recently delayed the game by 2 months to ensure a polished launch experience. Hopefully the game runs well without any significant problems. The recommended specs suggest we might be in for some smooth sailing, but these days you can never really tell. Before we get to our final story today, I just wanted to say thanks for tuning in. We hope today's show updated you on what's going on in the gaming world. If you enjoyed it, leave a like and don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on gaming news. Dying Light 2 has some bugs. On launch, players have reported all sorts of oddities like missions not completing on their own, falling through the level, multiplayer stability, and more. The good news is the developers have announced several fixes that should be launching by the middle of next week on all platforms. The game is proving to be a smash hit with players. The player count peaked at over 250,000 concurrent players on Steam alone. Critical reviews have been less than glowing regarding Dying Light 2's story and overall writing, but most praise the gameplay and increased scale over the first game. And that wraps it up for today in gaming. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.